Hey guys, Chris from Average Eskate Reviews here, and today in this video I wanted to take a look at the difference between the Hadean Bamboo and the GTR Series 2 Bamboo. Now this is probably going to be one of the most requested videos I get in terms of Evolve content. Which board should I pick up if I'm trying to figure out where my money should be invested? Because first things first, there's a big price difference between these two boards. The Hadean is priced at £1,749. The GTR Series 2 Bamboo is priced at £1,199. So the price difference between the two is £550. So if you're in the market for an Evolve board and you want to know where your money's going to be best spent, hopefully we'll help you get to the bottom of that in this video. And of course, I know I've been away for a couple of months. Just breaking it down nice and quickly is, like anything in life, I kind of found myself getting bored of making skateboard videos and also riding boards. It started to get colder, so I just didn't want to make any videos, and my other channel was incredibly busy. I'm trying to balance it out now. I've kind of like remembered why I got into riding skateboards in the first place, and taking a break sometimes is nice because you get back into it with a lot more energy and enthusiasm. So here I am back with another video. Now, of course, like all of the content I shoot, I'm going to be splitting this up into categories to best explain the points that you need to consider about these two boards. Now, the first one is going to be the build or the construction of these two boards. What is physically different when you look at the Hadean versus the GTR Series 2, which in the rest of this video I'm going to be referring to as the GTR. Now, the first one I'm going to touch on is going to be the similarities. In terms of the trucks, they're both the same, the bushings exactly the same, the motors exactly the same, and when we look at the deck, they're both constructed in the same way, but they're very, very different shapes, and this is going to be probably one of the most standout features that you'll notice is very different. When we look at the Hadean, the deck length is 39.7 inches in length, whereas on the GTR that deck length is 38 inches. Now it's only 1.7 inches in difference, but lads, I think you can agree, if you have a little bit extra, 1.7 inches to play with, you're going to notice the difference. And safe to say, when you're on these two boards, if you hop from one to the other, or if you've had a GTR and you hop onto a Hadean, you do notice the difference. The extra length means a slightly wider foot base, which in my perspective gives you a lower center of gravity, and it just feels like you have a lot more control and balance when you're on the board, especially going at top speeds. Now, in addition to this, the Hadean has a slight drop down that I'll refer to as quite a mild drop down. It's not too crazy that it feels like you've got like an actual step in front of your foot, but the drop down on this board I find is just incredibly comfortable, and it allows you to have reference of where your feet are on the deck without having to look down at the board, because I can't count the amount of times on the GTR deck I've moved my back foot a little bit too far back and caught the wheel while I'm riding. Now, this isn't something that's caused me any issues in terms of safety or whatever, but it just means that all of my white trainers have a little black mark where I've caught the wheel of the deck, or rather on the board. So it's nice to know where your feet are with the Hadean deck. And in terms of the concave, I found that the concave on the GTR was very, very mild. A U concave, I wouldn't really refer to it as a W concave in my perspective. It was more of a very subtle U concave, whereas on the Hadean board it has more of a very subtle W concave. Now, in terms of deck shape, I definitely prefer the Hadean deck over the GTR deck, just because it's a bigger deck. Something else I better touch on before I forget is also the different widths of these two decks. The GTR deck is a little bit more narrow than the Hadean. If you even look at images of it online, where your feet go on the deck, so the top section of the deck and the bottom section, it kind of flares out. It's roughly about an inch wider than what you'd see on the GTR. That doesn't sound like it's a big difference, but if you have big feet, or if you just want more foot to board contact, so your feet kind of sit on the deck of the board a lot more and you don't really have as much of your feet, shoes, trainers or whatever hanging off of the edge of the deck, then of course the Hadean is going to be the option to go for if you're just basing it off of the deck shapes. So like I said, I definitely prefer the Hadean deck. And of course, another difference between both of these two boards in terms of the build and the construction is going to be the Hadean has a light bar on the front and also the rear of the board. So when you're braking, it flashes red at the back. So at nighttime, anyone behind you knows that you're braking, which is really appreciated. You can add this on the GTR, but it means purchasing the light strips and installing them yourself at an additional cost. But having lights built into the board, I thought was kind of like a really silly novelty. But when you ride around at night, you quickly understand why it's an advantage. Extra visibility, and it does really help the board to stand out and look nice. Now from there, looking at the different enclosures on both of these two boards, although they are very similar, both flexible enclosures, they are a little bit different because the GTR has a 10S 4P battery, whereas the Hadean has a 12S 4P battery. So the battery on the Hadean is a little bit bigger than what you'd get with the GTR, and that of course requires a little bit more space for it to sit. So there is a couple of differences with the enclosures on both of these two boards, and of course the different battery sizes and the way that the motors have been set up on each of these two boards will essentially reflect the top speed you're able to get out of these two boards, and also the torque that you're able to get out of both of these boards. Now, both the boards do have the same motors, but because they have different setups in terms of batteries and also in terms of the way that they've been programmed, you're going to get very different performances out of these two boards, but I'll touch on that later on in the video. Now, from there, taking a look at the speed, I feel like that's the most logical thing to go into after looking at the batteries that both of these two boards have. I'm just going to take my wristband off because it's making some clicking sounds. Now, looking at the speed of both of these two boards, the Hadean has a top speed of 27 miles an hour. That's what I've been able to hit in the board, so that's what I'm going to say it as, although I know on the Evolve website it says 26 miles an hour. Now, 27 mile an hour top speed is definitely achievable, and something that you definitely enjoy with this board is that this board is able to maintain that top speed for a lot longer period of time as you go through the battery percentages. So 90%, 80%, 70%, you're still able to hit top speed, which was something that you couldn't really do previously. So I definitely do like that. And when you look at the top speed on the GTR, that's going to be able to hit 23 miles an hour. Now, although on paper it looks like the difference between these two boards in terms of top speed is 3 or 4 miles an hour, which some would say is a big deal on the board, but some would say isn't a big deal on the board. I'll let you guys decide that. The most significant thing that you notice with these two boards is going to be the way that each of them gets to that top speed. If you jump on a GTR Series 2 and you're riding around, that board feels more than adequate. But if you immediately then hop off that board and then jump onto a Hadean, you do notice the difference. The torque, the acceleration on the Hadean is not a little bit better, it's not marginally better, it's massively, massively improved. Now, that is going to benefit certain types of riders on certain types of surfaces, which I'll come to a little bit later on in the video. But I just wanted to mention that it's a 3-4 mile an hour top speed mark difference, but the torque and the way each of these boards gets to that top speed is the biggest difference. The Hadean will reach top speed much, much quicker than the GTR. So if that's something that you feel would be an issue for you, I guess it makes it easy trying to figure out which one of these two boards to pick up. Now, the advertised range isn't going to be something I'm looking at. I'm going to be telling you what I got in terms of rideable range. And what I mean by rideable range is when the board is still going, but it's still enjoyable to ride as you deplete the battery. So once it gets to like the sluggish stages where it's crawling at 10 miles an hour, I would then immediately stop riding the board, and that's where my rideable range cap comes in. I don't want to ride at 10 miles an hour. If I can't hit at least 20 something, I'm kind of done riding the board. And with the GTR, the range I was able to get out of that board was somewhere around 14 to 16 miles of rideable range. This is on 7-inch wheels, riding on the 66 tooth gear setup, riding quite aggressively, not just coasting at 15 miles an hour. And this is going to be riding on different terrains, a little bit on grass, but mainly on asphalt. And when we look at the rideable range of the Hadean, I was sat somewhere between 18 and 21 miles. Again, same scenario, 66 tooth gear setup on 7-inch wheels, riding pretty aggressively through the city. And of course, quickly touching on braking, both these two boards have very, very good braking. It's something I definitely can't complain about. I've not really been able to feel any differences between the braking. Now, of course, they have the same motors, but like I said, they're wired differently, or rather programmed differently, and also have different batteries. But braking for me on both of these boards was pretty much identical. Now, when we look at charging with the Hadean and the GTR, first of all, I'm not going to let Evolve slide, and I am going to say that these two boards need a fast charger. I don't know what you guys are doing, Evolve, but you need to drop a fast charger for these two boards. It wildly improves the riding experience if you can take the battery from 0 to 100 in, an hour or two, rather than 4 or 5 hours. Now, when we look at the Hadean's charge time, that's sat at about 4 hours because it has a faster charger than what you would see on the GTR, or what we saw previously on GTRs. Now, with the GTR Series 2, the charge time is somewhere around 4.5 hours to get the board from completely flat, not rideable range, completely dead, all the way back up to 100%. And this is where the issue comes in. I need to see a fast charger from Evolve, because there's boards out there that will go from dead to 100% in an hour or an hour and a half, which means you don't have to worry about extra batteries, you don't have to worry about other power supplies. You can literally just ride all day, stop for an hour, charge the board up and keep going. So Evolve, please, fast charger. But 4.5 hours roughly is what you're getting on the GTR Series 2, about 4 hours is what you're getting on the Hadean. But I will mention that charge times for me is always a little less, somewhere around the 2.5 to 3 hour mark, because I don't completely deplete the battery. This comes back to what I said about rideable range. When I kind of cap my range off, I know that the board could still probably do another 4, maybe 5 miles of range, but I don't want to ride when it's that slow. So that's why my charge time's a little bit shorter, because the board is never 100% dead when I charge it back up. But just bear that in mind in case you're charging style or actual range that you want to get out of the board, and the way that you ride is a little bit different to me. And of course, when we look at the remotes of both of these two boards, since Evolve introduced the GTR Series 2 rather than the original GTR Series 1, both of these boards are now using the same remote, which is the upgraded phase remote, which is that, you know, metal construction. This remote, I've thrown it up in the sky. I've tried to break it, couldn't break it. The remotes on these boards are incredible, and I do have to give Evolve credit in this area. I know some people don't care about the remote, they don't want a screen, they just want a standard remote, but I like to be able to go through the settings on the board. So both of these boards having the same, you know, upgraded, really sturdy remotes is definitely appreciated. You can do everything from see how much battery life the board and the remote has, go through the settings to change different parameters on the board, whether it's the braking sensitivity, whether it's the speed mode that you're in to affect the top speed you can get out of the board, whether it's the odometer to see how much range you've been clocking, how much total range the board has done since it's been turned on and ridden. The remote has a bunch of features, and of course if you have the Hadean board, you're able to go through the board and change the different lights that the board has, what color setups that you want. So it's got a lot of different settings on the board which are greatly appreciated. Now, coming to the most important part of the video, who are these boards going to be for? You're trying to figure out which one of these two boards you should pick up. I feel like the majority of riders that I've interacted with would be more than happy with the GTR Series 2. It's more than enough skateboard for the vast majority of people that are out there. Of course, there's riders that want to ride on vest-based boards, custom boards, or monster boards that do crazy miles an hour. But I've seen a lot of riders that ride very powerful boards that don't take them to even 20% of their capacity. And for me, in that sense, if you've got the money and you want to spend it on that, that's great. But if that's not you and you're trying to be a little bit budget conscious, I would definitely consider looking at the GTR Series 2. If you just want a board to rip around a city, maybe commute to work, have fun with some friends, go on group rides, the GTR Series 2 is more than enough skateboard for the vast majority of people out there. And I'm not talking about just people that are entry-level riders. I'm talking about people that have been riding for a while, but might not be riding every single day of their lives, give or take whatever weather conditions are out there. Now, on the flip side, of course, if you want a board that is more powerful, that has a greater top speed, you could automatically say that you need to look at the Hadean. But because the GTR Series 2 has those big motors, you could switch out the gears, go for like a 47 tooth gear, still on 7-inch wheels, to get more speed out of the board. There's lots of things that you can do because it has those new big motors that can handle quite a lot, to be able to kind of tweak the board and get more speed out of it if you wanted to. But of course, if you just want a board that has a bigger battery like the 12S4P battery rather than the 10S4P, which is the Hadean, you like the top speed that board does, and of course if you messed with the gears on the Hadean, you'd be able to get even more top speed out of the board, then it kind of makes it easy figuring out which direction you need to go in. But I will mention that I think another area that really impacts which board you should pick up is if you ride off-road a lot, if you do trails, if you do pump tracks. If you need a board that can handle hills, going through various terrain like gravel or dirt through forest trails and stuff like that, having a board with more torque, more top end, more power, essentially a bigger battery to feed those motors with more power, the Hadean is going to be the standout board over the GTR Series 2 in that particular instance. And of course, like I mentioned at the start of the video, if the deck shape of the board affects your riding, so if you're maybe somebody that has big feet or somebody that just prefers to have a slightly longer deck, slightly wider deck, and the concave of these two boards is very different, that again will affect which one of these two boards you should pick up. But if you're just looking for a solid board that you can cruise through the city with and have some fun, occasionally going on pump tracks, maybe a couple of indoor go-kart tracks or stuff like that, the GTR Series 2 is more than enough board. And of course, another particular rider that would really benefit from the GTR Series 2 rather than the Hadean is going to be somebody that's a casual rider. If you're just trying to get an electric skateboard that's good, but you're not really too concerned about getting the most powerful one, perhaps you're only going to be riding the odd weekend out of the summer, I would personally go for the GTR Series 2, save myself £550 rather than going with the Hadean, which of course is more skateboard, but it's a lot more money. 550 quid is a big difference between these two boards in terms of the price, but the performance benefits, I guess you could say, aren't massive if you're the type of rider that is going to be very casual with it. You're only going to be getting on every now and then over the summertime. I'd save some money and go with the Series 2 over the Hadean. But of course, if you need something with a little bit more torque specifically for riding off-road, or if you're somebody that needs to have more off-the-line power, in congested cities, I think this really excels when you're at traffic lights and you just want to beat all of those damn cyclists, maybe even people on electric bikes. You just want to get ahead of people that are there. The extra acceleration and torque you get on the Hadean definitely excels in that particular instance. But of course, if there's anything else that you think I've missed out or any other questions that you have, please comment down below and I will answer them as quickly as I can. Hopefully I've helped to shed a little bit of light on these two boards and the way I would personally treat them, trying to figure out which one I would go for. Based on my riding style, the fact that I predominantly like to make the board go sideways and carve a lot and just go as quickly as I can, I default to using the Hadean, and the GTR Series 2 is definitely not the board for my particular riding style, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be the board for your riding style. But if you have any other questions, please comment down below and I'll try to get to them as quickly as I can. Big thank you for watching and take care till next time.